product, and then they used partners and affiliates extranet using a product called Drupal, which is a PHP based web content management system. So with combining these two products, see what happens in most of the time, even if you buy from a commercial vendor, let's say you buy from Oracle or you buy from IBM or Microsoft, you never get a single product which solves all your content management or portal problems. Basically, you end up buying 7 or 8 products. For example, if you look at Oracle, they acquired Stellent, they have database, they have portal, Oracle portal. So what they do is, if you say you need a system to manage entire e-commerce database and content and partner affiliates, they come up with 7 or 8 distinct products and they try to integrate for you, basically. So they say, they tell you only the license cost, but end of the day, you end up paying a lot of money for customization, integration, and most important thing is, if you look at over a period of 3 to 5 years, you end up paying a lot of money in terms of upgrading the systems. One simple example, because I was working with a site called Walmart.com, which is world's largest e-commerce website built on top of a product called Broadvision. So if you want to upgrade Broadvision, then Broadvision, one version of Broadvision works only with one version of Oracle that works with one version of a search engine. So if you're upgrading one software, you are forced to upgrade all other software. So your cost of upgrade sometimes will be more than your initial implementation cost, especially in enterprise content management implementation. So for them, in this case, Corsair, they leveraged open source for low total cost of ownership. They were using very expensive commercial e-commerce product and a commercial CMS, and they replaced with Magento and Drupal as a combination. So they are able to reduce the cost, because in US, the economy was going down and they never had the budget which they used to have before, and they were looking at various ways of reducing the total cost by running the business. So open source is a very good alternative option for them. And then there is a company called Singtel, which is a Singapore Telecom, which is Asia's largest mobile operator, serving about 74 million customers. Basically, they wanted to, they were thinking about what are the different ways of generating revenue, because they already have 74 million subscribers who are using their mobile services. Then they said, okay, why can't they launch a mobile music portal where people can download music on their mobile phones and pay for that music. Now they approached various other vendors who are using very expensive proprietary software for serving the content on the mobile phones. So Singtel did not have that kind of budget, so they were keep on postponing the project. And then they discovered, so one of the section heads said, oh, let's try open source. So they nicely picked up a small pilot project for 2 weeks of launching a small music portal, and they were able to download and push it to the customers and people, and they liked it and said, oh, this really works good. And the site was launched in about 5 weeks time. From the day they decided to do it, in 5 weeks, the entire music portal is up. And the proprietary vendors initially told them that it's going to take them around 6 months to 9 months to bring up a music portal, whereas they were able to bring it up in about 5 weeks record time. And surprisingly, this particular site has won the best mobile music service award in Hong Kong. So for them, the way they leverage the open source is basically to have a competitive advantage, to have advantage over their competitors in the similar market. How well can we create a competitive advantage using open source is something they leverage pretty well, and it's in production. All the applications and the examples I am showing here, they're all production systems which are in production for years now, where I personally involved in implementing, the Signex personally involved in implementing, these systems. There are many enterprises using open source, and they have already used open source for many years. I think in the morning I've listened to a talk where there is an open source initiative for collaborative drug discovery. We have done it almost 6 years ago with Eli Lilly. If we look at that, where we created something called collaborative drug discovery, and then so there is one customer called Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories, basically the company which created the atom bomb and all in the United States. We created the complete weapons test data repository using open source. We rolled it out in US government. We rolled it out in Europe. For banks, if you look at a lot of educational institutes are using open source. For knowledge management, portals, content management, learning content management. So when you say content management, for me, there's a different interpretation of what you mean to say content is. For example, in a financial sectors, all the financial information is a content. The forms are content. In education sector, the educational content, the educational information you have, the course is a content. Especially in healthcare, the healthcare information you pass, you take the information from the patients, the information doctors create, the information you distribute, everything is a content that way. So we leveraged a lot of telecommunication companies leveraged open source. Financial big banks like DBS Bank is one of the largest banks, and Citibank uses Bank of America. A lot of banks use open source. So there are many companies have already leveraged open source. And these examples, I'm not talking about somebody downloading Linux or MySQL or Red Hat or something. These are the people who created real business critical applications using open source. Okay, that is very important. It's not like the framework or the infrastructure. No, it's a critical applications which interact with their end-to-end customers, which are basically revenue generation streams for these companies. There are many multi-billion-dollar companies using open source. These companies, they have a lot of budget. The main criteria for them to use open source is not just the cost per se. They have many other criteria for them to decide upon open source. So why did they use open source? Is basically they need to have a better control over their technology investments, and then they need to have standardization of the technology. We were working with a company in media. They have about 56 different websites on different third proprietary technologies. So they were able to consolidate all of them into one particular framework of open source. So they leveraged it and saved a lot of money and maintenance and so on. And then increase the operational efficiency, like like we have seen in the business process management case, and obviously innovation, because open source gives you a competitive advantage and also gives you a lot of innovation in this whole process. So you leverage that innovation, and also not only the innovation made by your company, you leverage the innovation which is being done by a lot of companies across the globe, and you share that, and that's how it's going to be multiplied so many times faster. And obviously reduces the business risk, and then it saves a lot of cost. So if you look at most of the surveys done, the cost is not the primary criteria for people to adopt open source, especially in enterprise business applications. So with that introduction, I'm just quickly coming to the agenda. I'll give you a very quick introduction and then go through the blueprint. So I'm author of 3 books on open source content management. One is Alfresco, and then I'm author of a book called Plone, where we distributed books in the community. I'm going to skip some of these things quickly. So I'm going to skip some of these slides also because of the time factor we have. And then hopefully I'll share this presentation with the people where I'm not able to cover all the slides. Maybe you will have an opportunity to go through the slides later on. So if you look at the evaluation of open source, most of you already know, and this covered over a time period of, when it started and all. And now what we see as a company, right, though I've been working with open source for almost 12 years now, the real adoption of the business application, the enterprise business application, is something I've been seeing since 2005. The business applications, I mean the ECM, enterprise content management, the digital asset management, RM is records management, managing all your paper-based documents, records, archiving, and so on. The web content management, the business process management, portals. BI is a business intelligence, ERP, CRM, and then e-commerce, and so on. And I'm going to skip some of these predictions, I say 80%, 100%, but we'll have to see over a period of time how much of percentage that is going to be truly adopted, over a period of time. But these numbers look pretty exciting, for the people. Now, the enterprise application stack is the next inflection point, is the applications, business applications in open source adoption. Now we have open source alternatives. So if you are trying to implement a solution and looking at the third party proprietary software, please see most probably there is already an open source product which solves this problem and in the similar space, which might be far cheaper and far flexible for you. For example, this particular slide is by Alfresco, where they compared with EMC Documentum, OpenText, and Microsoft SharePoint, and they challenged it and said, we can save you 96% of your cost. for a 1,000 user. Basically, there is a